Netskope is a technology that is a security stack for the cloud. And Netskope secures data wherever it is, wherever it goes, protecting users and making them work productively. So business agility drove or drives the digital transformation agenda. Part of digital transformation, there are two pieces to it. There's a cultural part, there's an organizational part, as well as the underlying technology. So cloud has become the main component of technology enabler for that business agility. Cloud is indeed a major part, and cloud is a blessing and a curse. It does allow us to move quickly. It does allow us to bring that agility to be able to onboard a new location. That's the blessing part.
This is CIONET TV. My name is Hendrik Deckers. I'm here today with Ilona Simpson, who is the CIO EMEA, a member of the strategy office at Netskope. A very warm welcome, Ilona.
Hendrik, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to our conversation.
Ilona, you're originally from Donetsk in Ukraine. You studied electrotechnics and psychology, and you started your career at Accenture. You then worked at Porsche, at DHL, at Aston Martin, and at Adidas, and you joined Netskope in January 2022. But tell us a little bit more about yourself, a bit more detail. What's your background really, and how did you arrive in this position?
Well, my background, my career started in large-scale ERP implementations. SAP migrations from R2 to R3 back in the day, specialization in cost object controlling, so it was finance and controlling. And Porsche was the employer number one 1 year in Germany, and I quite enjoyed, quite liked the idea of seeing what number one looks like from the inside. And I wrote the application to HR. It was the speculative application. And it was, hey, I'm here. Does anybody want me? I can do HR because that's what I studied, and I can do IT because that's what I've done. Would you like to have a conversation? And to my great surprise, I was invited to an interview and was then offered a role which became a process engineer. So I was process engineer at Porsche, looking at how to improve processes from R&D to manufacturing, supply chain, and to retail network. Went into project management, program management, portfolio management, but at some point, and that was my pivot into the first CIO role, is when, even by the time you are designing and shaping the portfolio, all the interesting decisions from my perspective then were already taken. And it's which direction are we heading? Yep. What are the strategic priorities, etc. So I decided to go for an MBA. I did a global executive MBA. And during that time, I earned a promotion and became CIO of Porsche UK, which was the third largest market for Porsche, and run fairly independently. And from then on, I developed then further into CIO roles.
Okay. And so today you work at Netskope. For those of us who don't know Netskope yet, could you describe in a couple of sentences what is it that Netskope does really, really well? In
plain language, Netskope is a technology that is a security stack for the cloud. And Netskope secures data wherever it is, wherever it goes, protecting users and making them work productively.
Okay, great. And we'll come back to that in a moment. But let's start our conversation with looking at what are the main challenges that organizations that you work with, organizations that are member of CIONET, what are the main challenges that they are facing today, according to you?
Well, the main challenges, and I can also say from first-hand perspective, I've been with Netskope, as you mentioned, for a few months. So I've been in CIO level roles myself up until very recently. We've been talking about business agility. And business agility is by no means an esoteric term. It's something that is very tangible, that's expressed through how long does it take us to go through an M&A transaction? What does it mean to stand up a manufacturing plant or a supply chain change? How long does it take us to onboard our customers, vendors, etc.? So business agility drove or drives the digital transformation agenda. And part of digital transformation, there are two pieces to it. There's a cultural part, there's a organizational part, as well as the underlying technology. So cloud has become the main component of technology enabler for that business agility.
Yeah. So let's maybe, because you're a psychologist, you studied psychology, let's maybe dive a little bit into the cultural aspects of transformation. I mean, you worked at Adidas and DHL and so on. So how do you look at that angle of transformation? What is it that companies need to focus on culture-wise, people-wise, when they go to a transformation?
If I was, if I was to express it more in a structural way, yeah, because the structure brings with it the culture, it's where is decision making happening in organization? Yeah, is it within the functional areas? We sometimes call them silos. They're just different disciplines. Yeah. Is it top down, or is decision making based on where the expertise is? Yeah, so that cultural transformation, yes, we can talk about it's empowered people, it's autonomous teams. They're never autonomous, it's semi-autonomous. I think if everyone was autonomous in a bigger corporation, then we would know that would be herding cats. That doesn't work. Yeah, by giving more autonomy and delegating that decision making, it's about enterprise working more as a network and not as a linear structure.
Okay. And the technology part of transformation, I mean, cloud is a major thing in there. So tell me a little bit, how do you look at the role of cloud in digital transformation?
Cloud is indeed a major part, and cloud is a blessing and a curse. Yeah, we have gone through an evolution of moving towards cloud and some of the recent examples are quite impressive when a company, utilities giant like E.ON in Germany, have declared that they are moving to cloud strategy. Yeah, so they're moving all their applications towards cloud. So cloud has come a long way. We have an average large enterprise has about 2,500 applications in the cloud.
Wow.
We have over 60% of our data is in the cloud, and over half of the knowledge workers, of the ones who really carry the intellectual property, the knowledge of the processor systems, etc., of companies, over half of them are in the cloud.
Yeah, and you call it a blessing. And why you call it a blessing?
I call it a blessing because it does allow us to move quickly. It does allow us to bring that agility, to be able to onboard like a new location. Yeah, yes, that's the blessing part.
Okay, but you also call it a curse. So what's the curse part of cloud? Because I mean, we're all going. I think for many organizations, the end state is that we're going to go 100% cloud or 95% cloud. And even large organizations like I say, maybe halfway there, and if they also put their ERPs in the cloud, we're going to be there at 70, 80, 90% pretty soon for many organizations. But it's not the ideal world. It needs to be managed and so on, right?
So where is the curse of the cloud? The curse of the cloud is the governance part of it. Yeah, it's a governance, risk management and control part of it. With the number of applications growing, majority of them, or significant, let me put a significant number of those, not governed by the technology functions, by the IT departments. Yeah, so and they then present a risk surface. Yeah, how are they controlled? How do we protect data loss? How do we protect from ransomware entering the organization, etc.
Okay. So what you're saying is we come 10, 20 years ago from a world that you know very well, where you had your standard SAP or ERP and everything, 90% of the business was in there. And now we're back on the other side of the pendulum, and there's 2,500 applications, all in different clouds around the globe, different, managed not only by IT, but by business units itself. So keeping that secure, keeping that compliant is a major task. So
it is a major task, yeah.
So let's talk about that technology stack and that security stack that is necessary to manage just such a vast collection of cloud applications.
Maybe if we start with that emergence of cloud has surfaced a bottleneck, and a bottleneck was indeed in security. And what's traditional security approach within the walls of the company campus? Yeah, within the perimeter, the traditional security approach was we had a user. And we had a device. We knew whether user is part of the company and whether device is part of the company. And then there was a destination app, and it was fairly binary. It's a yes or no. Now, with and the traditional security was also based on an implicit trust. So if there was a device that was known and a user that was known, implicitly it was trusted. And the premise trust by verify. With the emergence of cloud, with the surgence of zero trust principles that reverse the whole thing, and it's now verify then trust. Yeah, not trust but verify then trust. It's also a principle of assume breach and work from there.
Okay.
So it put a different paradigm, brought forward a different paradigm. Zero trust is then expressed through a kind of as strategy and principles. They're translated into the architecture, which is called SASE, which is translated into a technology stack. So there's security as a service, a network as a service, and then security as a service again has components to protect your web, to protect your applications, etc. So that's the kind of bigger picture from on a zero trust security.
So zero trust is really a set of principles and it's a strategy. And so where does Netskope fit into this picture of zero trust?
As every strategy is translated into some architectural principles. Yeah, for zero trust, those principles are expressed as secure access service edge, and it's nothing different but two major components: is security as a service and network as a service.
Okay.
Within security as a service, zero trust as a whole is expressed through four major components.
Okay.
And it's zero trust network access, it's cloud security, it's web browsing security, and it's prevention of data loss.
So, and Ilona, in that framework, let's say, in that context, what is it that makes Netskope unique? How does Netskope differentiate itself from other security platforms and services?
Netskope's interpretation of zero trust is our solution is continuous, adaptive, and context aware. What Netskope is able to detect is when we look at movement of data, is data moving between your company's OneDrive and personal OneDrive, for example? Yeah, that instance awareness, the granularity, and that's one of the use cases. Looking at user behavior analytics, has the user been over time and using machine learning and artificial intelligence over time? Users have a certain pattern of activity. Is there a spike in that pattern? Is someone unusually starts downloading thousands of files where all their colleagues are downloading about 10, 15, and they used to do the same. So is there any unusual activity there? Where is the application that they're trying to access? Remember the 2,500 that are out there? A SaaS is not equal SaaS. Some of them are very secure and have high degree of confidence. Some others are less so. So is the user trying to access application that is not not very very secure, very where we don't have the confidence in that application. Is the user accessing a website that may be dangerous? Yeah. So how can we prevent the user from interacting with a website that could be a source of threat?
Okay. And so Netskope calls itself data-centric, cloud-smart, and fast. What do these three components or these three keywords really mean?
We're exceptionally good at securing data, as well as helping organizations with GDPR compliance. We secure data wherever it is and wherever it goes. As well as the users, wherever they are, whether it's internal user, external user, and have very high granularity on how we secure that.
Okay.
Cloud-centric, as you mentioned, Netskope is a cloud security company. So we help companies move their and fast-track their cloud adoption agenda through modern technology to safeguard that transformation. And smart through usage of machine learning, artificial intelligence. We're using a whole set of tools, including user coaching, to make people better digital citizens, to encourage that good behavior, digital behavior, with coaching and educating.
Okay. Now, you've joined the company in January 2022. What is today really your role? I mean, you're part of the strategy office and CIO EMEA. So what is it that the strategy office does, and what is your role in there?
As the name suggests, strategy office takes care of the strategy. My personal role has two elements. There's a content and a product-centric element to it. I come from automotive and have a strong DNA in manufacturing industrial context. So the part of what I do is related to that aspect of my expertise. Another part is helping our customers get the most out of Netskope suite, being executive sponsor for customers, helping them on a journey towards the zero trust, and raising awareness in general public about the importance of zero trust, looking at how can we as CIOs, what's our understanding of cybersecurity, and how can we raise the awareness for cybersecurity.
Yeah. So in your view, I mean, you've been in several roles, CIO in large organizations. How has the way that the CIO looks at security changed over the last 10 years, let's say? Because I remembered 10, 15 years ago, security, well, we have a department for that. We have somebody for that. And today, I think it's very much on top of the agenda of the CIO, if not the CEO. So what's your view on that? You are in there, you are in that role. How has that changed over the last decade?
Well, it dramatically, hasn't it? And indeed, Hendrik, what you're saying, I can totally relate to it. My first action as a global CIO of a global car manufacturer, was to employ a CISO. Yeah, and to get experts to take care of the topic, and where it has evolved now, it's vulnerability is on CIO's agenda, governance, risk management, and compliance is part of the CIO agenda, and cybersecurity topics. If it's application security, it's user security, etc. So it's very much an integral part of CIO agenda. And regardless of whether CISO, so whether cybersecurity is part of the CIO function or not, they do absolutely need to join forces to jointly drive the security agenda of any transformation.
Yeah. So does the CISO role, does it need to be governed or managed by the CIO, or is it better to have the CISO outside of IT? What's your view on that?
Outside of IT.
Outside of IT, okay.
Yeah.
And why is that?
I've seen both. I've seen both constellations. If a CISO is part of IT, then you're asking the governance function to report into the operating function. So it's the importance, the level of conversations and a dialogue that CISOs are involved in that shifts dramatically with the reporting line.
Okay, yeah.
And it's CISOs have the opportunity to educate their own boards, to get closer involvement of boards into the topics without becoming too technical. And that's in my view, CISOs and CIOs are peers. They should be peers.
So the CISOs should not report into the CFO then, or the COO, and should be on the same level as the other CXOs?
Could be a chief risk officer, or a chief compliance officer. So that could be a way, or chief operating officer. Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the role of the CIO. We know that security, cybersecurity, zero trust, and so on has become top of his agenda nowadays. What else, when you talk to your clients and your peers of CIOs, what else do you see that is top of mind of CIOs nowadays?
Talent shortage. Getting good people is a challenge.
Yeah.
And an interesting, a curious fact is that, I don't know whether you knew it, but I learned recently that the most learned language these days is which?
I've got no Chinese.
No, it's not. Not Chinese, not English. It's Python. Python is the single most learned language. So we have people entering workforce who are digitally very, very savvy. Yeah, who know computing, who probably have learned coding. We have platforms that are available, but they usually go into business functions. It's marketing, or it's manufacturing, or it's something else. So it's the very technologically savvy workforce that we have in a business. And how do we attract people into the technology functions? How do we compete in a most positive way possible with the technology companies who are very attractive, for people who are starting their journeys or who are wanting to develop further?
So Ilona, next to security and to talent shortages, what are the other main challenges that you see on the CIO's agenda nowadays?
CIOs are now having the challenge, or the opportunity, I'd call it opportunity, to drive that cultural transformation that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And a cultural transformation towards product-led organizations, towards organizations that are no longer aggregating the decision-making within a hierarchy, but who are structured based on products, interconnected, operating as a network, where the product owners are the ones who are designing the strategy, architecture, who are surrounded by people to support them with cybersecurity, with vendor management, with all the supporting functions.
So Ilona, now you, January 2022, you join Netskope, you come from an industry background, manufacturing background, and now you're in a high-tech software company. So let's talk about, was that a culture shift for you, and how do you experience, how do you thrive in such an environment?
It was a true culture shift, moving from fairly static. We all say we're going through transformation, and it always is, but in a big scheme of things, it's rather incremental evolution. I haven't seen big companies moving kind of pivoting their entire business models and 40,000 employees worldwide and whatsoever to different horizons, where a technology, Netskope as a technology company, Netskope as a leader in their sector, is what stands out to me is highly purpose driven. Yeah, we are securing the organizations. We are securing people in those organizations. We are securing the data and protecting those. So there's a very high degree on what does purpose mean and how it aligns with your values. There's an element of it's a technology. Technology evolves and technology develops. We know changes very, very fast. Yep. So now the organization is used to it's a very different pace. It's a place where between a board decision and implementation, it will take 2 months. Where in a traditional organization, what I've seen firsthand, it'll be 6-9 months or sometimes over a year. So that's the main. And the culture, it's a very flat hierarchy. It's different way of making decisions, degree of autonomy, and also the level of change as well as growth.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about you. I mean, you've managed large teams, you have led large teams in the past. So let's talk a little bit about your leadership style. And so. When you're a CIO, when you're leading the strategy or you're helping to lead the strategy in your company, leadership is very important, and even more important than the management style, I would say. So if I would go back to your previous teams in Adidas or in DHL, what do you think that people would say about your leadership style? How do you think you are perceived as a leader?
Inclusive, to start with. I do set high targets, ambitious, and supportive.
Okay.
And I think one lesson I learned from myself fairly early in a day is that any change that we drive as leaders, it's not us executing it. We drive change through people.
Yeah.
So and the way to align people, the way for organization to follow a strategy is for the employees, for the teams to understand the value, to align on the purpose, and to see that purpose also in line with their own values and purpose.
Yeah. And when you say inclusive, that inclusivity is important for you, can you give an example what that means?
That means that if I give you an example of a strategic collaboration between two large organizations, and we had a group of people who were heading up the IT work stream. And on that group of people were the directors. And I brought in the head of help desk because they needed to be involved. So who are the people? Who are the ones who are carrying the load? Who are the ones who have valuable input? So it's not about how do we structure it so that the right positions in a hierarchy are taken into account, but who is the team regardless of where they sit in an organization, and how do we create that culture, if you wish, where every voice is exactly the same.
Now, Ilona, you're clearly a very driven professional, very driven leader. And I know you travel around Europe and around the globe a lot. But if at the end of the week you come home, what needs to have happened so that you are a happy person and a happy professional?
Do I reflect on a week and say it made a change? I've contributed. Have the conversations that I had an impact? That's probably the major one.
Ilona, you shared with us that your MBTI profile is that you are an entertainer, an ESFP. And these are extroverted, observant, feeling, prospecting personalities. And these people typically love vibrant experiences. They engage in life eagerly. They take pleasure in discovering the unknown. And they can be very social, encouraging others into shared activities. So I'm going to name a couple of the typical strengths of people with the ESFP personality. And you tell me which ones you can relate most to, and maybe give an example of that. So people with an ESFP personality, they tend to be bold, they tend to be original, aesthetic and showmanship is important, they're very practical, observant, and have excellent people skills. So where does that relate to who you are, and can you talk a little bit about that?
Maybe I pick bold and practical.
Okay.
And it's sometimes, so I was brought into one of the CIO roles, and the mandate was to get a large-scale ERP implementation over the finish line. Mm-hmm. And everybody was saying, we've never been in a better shape. Having had first conversations with the team and looking at understanding what was happening, the project was delayed by significant period of time and was over budget already by significant amount. I decided to step back and do a proper due diligence. So code review, independent review of the health of the system, what's the quality of elements of ERP that have been delivered, and what do we need to complete. So it was 3 weeks of hell, a bit of boldness, and probably an element of people being good with people. We were a few who were having those intense weeks, and going back to the board with a recommendation to roll back the implementation and go back onto previous system and change the agenda. So the practicality perspective is you need to understand what the bottom line is, what are the total cost of delivery of ownership, and understand what's it made of. The boldness to say, you asked me to do X, dear board, I'm coming here and say this is actually the right thing to do, and bringing people on board to execute. Yeah. Okay.
Now the flip side of your personality is that some people with this personality type, they can be too sensitive, they can sometimes be conflict averse, they can be easily bored, poor-term, long-term planners, and sometimes unfocused. So nobody's perfect, so you must recognize some of this, and so which ones do you recognize, and how do you overcome these potential weaknesses?
From the practical perspective, I'd be sitting down and doing the long-term planning just by scheduling time in a diary. And reviewing it. Another part of it is when you look at strategy, it's always a long-term plan. So from the content perspective, a long-term plan is always there. Where I say I don't do long-term plans is I don't book my holidays 1 year in advance. Yeah. or when my husband and I go sailing, we go off. Yeah, so we go with the winds and are less driven by the agenda. An interesting thing, though, is that the last time I took the MBTI test, it was very different. It was the typical executive who struggled with, how do you relax and being stubborn and pushing the agenda. So I think part of my personal evolution was also to go a bit more away from thinking and judging to feeling and prospecting, to be more open-minded. Yeah.
So let's go in this leadership deep dive. Let's dive a little bit deeper, and let's talk about we talked about what drives you, about your personality. Let's talk about your core values. You shared with us that you have a family. You have 2 boys, 10 and 12 years old. They must be adorable at that age. So what are the what are the values that you are passing on to your boys? How do you want to see them grow up? What are the core values that are important for you?
Be respectful to yourself and to people around you. Being authentic. And don't be afraid to be the odd one out.
Okay. Were you the odd one out? Maybe a personal question, but...
Yes, I was. Imagine a Ukrainian coming to Germany at the age of 21, not speaking a word of German. So starting a university course and then being kind of the only psychologist in the IT team, being the only woman somewhere, etc. So there are so many situations, but that being the odd one out, that teaches us resilience, teaches us how to be versatile, how to be adaptive, and how to grow.
Ilona, do you have a personal mantra, a saying that guides you in your life?
I learned it from a friend of mine a few years back, and it's act as if success is inevitable. And before that, I had a very different mantra, and I can share that with you as well. It's from a very famous racing driver who once said, if everything's under control, you are not driving fast enough. So,
so that shows your ambition, I can imagine, right? So let's reflect a little bit on your personal, professional life. We all have amazing things that happen to us. I mean, you came from Ukraine to Germany to London. Now you have a global role. So you've had a lot of great things, good things happen to you. But looking back, what is maybe one of the really bad things, worst thing that has ever happened to you? And how did you overcome that? And what did you learn from it?
Can I think of one worst thing? Well, I found that in my life throws curveballs. Yeah, life just throws curveballs your way in a way we don't expect, or I didn't expect. And what I've done in those situations is looking for what choices do I have. So I had my kids they are now at the adorable age of 10 and 12. So and I left my role. Yeah, and then how do I go back into work? It was a struggle. Yeah, how do I go back to corporate world? But whilst I was looking for a corporate role, I joined a startup to build the operations. I insourced, grew the software team from 6 to 27. Have met many startups, invested in startups, mentored startups. Yeah. Then looking at the kind of time between Aston Martin and E.ON in the utilities company in Germany. I worked with private equity firm, worked with venture capital, etc. So it's looking at how do you fill those gaps, or even looking at the pandemic. My husband has had to give up his business. And I knew that due to a takeover of a company I was working for, my days were counted. So it's almost like we have a family to feed, and it's in a very foreseeable future. It is looking very unstable, very unstable for us. So, and again, how do you use that? And the blessing out of that is that my husband stayed with the kids. We were able to do the homeschooling that way, whilst I focused on a corporate career. Yeah.
Okay, and what is maybe the best thing that has ever happened to you?
The best thing that I don't know, being born. So far, it's always the last thing that's the best, isn't it? I think joining Netskope is a great, is a fantastic opportunity for me to learn a lot, to contribute.
In your career, Ilona, were there important mentors or important coaches or important leaders, important figures, people that you look up to and learned a lot from?
Yes, there are two. One of them is Melissa Di Donato. She's the CEO of SUSE. SUSE is the open source technology company. And the other one is Sigrid Nikuta, who is the member of the board of the German cargo railway company.
Okay, and what did you learn from them? Why do you look up to them, or how did they help you?
It's a strength, it's resilience, it's the way they engage, it's the way they engage with people, with topics, and the obstacles they have overcome. I find both very inspirational. And funny enough, both are quite exotic, and you can say odd ones out. Melissa studied languages and studied something very different to technology. And she was with SAP, with Salesforce, etc. So she has a very long and very successful technology career. And Dr. Nikuta, again, she studied psychology, yeah. And then she was the first CEO of a public transport company in Germany, in Berlin, who turned it from red figures into blacks. Yeah, so who actually turned around the company to be profitable for the first time. So it's that edge, and it's not even going an extra mile. It's taking organizations on a journey that they've never been before. Yeah.
In your life, professional life or personal life, what is it that you fear most? What is it that you love most?
I can't deal with loneliness. Probably part of being an extrovert is this. I get the energy from interactions with people, from helping people, from exchange and sharing. That's kind of the lifeline. So what I fear most is the opposite of that. And what I love most is helping, contributing, is shaping, driving, making a difference, probably, to summarize it.
Last question for today, Ilona, is these videos that are watched by very ambitious digital leaders of the future. And so what would your advice be? What have you learned that you can advise them to be as successful as you are and to follow in your footsteps?
Take people with you on a journey. You're only as good as your teams. You're only as good as you understand the priorities of the business, the pain points of your organization, of the market, of the society, and the needs, priorities, and sense of purpose and values of your team.
And on that note, Ilona, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to meeting you soon in real life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hendrik. It was a pleasure.